Everybody comes to me in those beginning stages, especially looking for the shortcut. And the shortcut is actually help people, like for real.
Where do all the people hang out that are looking for your services? Or potentially, right? They hang out in Facebook groups. They hang out in LinkedIn groups. I personally hang out a lot more on Facebook than any other social platform.
Let's talk implementation. I just want to share that because a lot of times people think I'm not ready. People will reject me. They need all this, info about it.
People can find just about all the info out there anyway. The fact that it's coming from you actually elevates your brand.
You look like you have a more sanity-based agency than a chaos-based one. I know there's probably still fires to put out and stuff like that.
I feel like we're just at the point where things are starting to become less chaotic.
What is up, all my amazing, attractive, sexy agency motherfuckers? I brought on our man Louis V today from Blue Crocus. And this is part of my mission, by the way, to show you guys agencies that are successful without cold DMing a billion people. I know that 90% of what's taught in our space is you got to fucking pound the pavement and message 1,000 motherfuckers a day. Lewis is having success. He is not cold DMing anyone. Hate to break it to you guys, and I want to show you guys and talk a little bit about how. So, firstly, my dude, thanks for being here. And let's start by just tell people a little bit about like what you guys do and who you do it for.
Sure, yeah, just 100% powered by maple syrup over here up in the Canadian tundra. You know how it is. But we do SEO and websites. That's our main jam for home service companies. And we've dabbled in ads before. I've never been happy with the results we could get because I don't know ads personally super well. And so I couldn't inspect what I expected. I could inspect it and see that stuff wasn't great. And then I just got frustrated and couldn't sleep at night knowing we were spending thousands of dollars for clients and not getting the best results. So we've just paired it back to what we're good at, websites and SEO, and home service is our jam.
Yeah, so you mentioned something like just when we were kind of shooting the shit off air is that one of the things that works really, really well for you. I would love for you to elaborate on this because I feel like if you're going to succeed long term, you actually have to add real value to your marketplace. Like everybody comes to me in those beginning stages, especially looking for the shortcut, and the shortcut is actually help people, like for real. That's the shortcut,
Yep.
and like do that consistently over time. And so one of the things you mentioned is you're part of a lot of contractor communities on Facebook, and you give the most helpful answers you possibly can, and you do that day in and day out, and you make sure you're visible, and you make sure people see you. And of course, you've got a well-optimized profiles. When people click on you, they can find out more information. But let's talk about that, like actually just answering questions and being helpful. Like,
Yeah, so I think you mentioned something at just now about giving value. I was trying to go down the cold DM route like early 2020, and basically it was super stressful and I was desperate and had commission breath because I had, pretty much just gone full time in the agency and needed to make money because I had hungry kids.
four
And
of them, I might add, just for those not
we
paying
didn't have four
attention.
then, but we have four now. But I got suggested to read the book The Go-Giver by Bob Berg, and it like
Yeah.
just flipped everything on its head for me. And I would highly recommend everybody in the agency space do it because we are, we're gods to a lot of people when it comes to our knowledge about the internet. I like to joke with our clients, okay, you're paying me to be your guide in the internet jungle. There's no stupid questions. And so if
Can I
you can
just
go into the
interrupt
groups,
you for like two
go,
seconds to say that's the baby, and Bob Berg is a friend of the show who's been on here.
yeah, Bob is awesome. Bob, I had a chance to interview him quickly on my podcast too. He's the real deal. He sent me a handwritten card after, like he lives the ethos that he preaches. But yeah, that changed the game for me. I really think it's important as agency owners to read that book, just as a person in general.
Yeah.
So you can take that and you can take that to groups. So where do all of Frankie talks about shoe buyers all the time. Where do all the people hang out that are looking for your services? Or potentially, right? They hang out in Facebook groups. They hang out in LinkedIn groups. I personally hang out a lot more on Facebook than any other social platform because that's what I've kind of optimized. And so they're in there and they're asking a ton of questions, some newbie questions, some more advanced questions. And if you can go in and answer them, pick the ones that you can answer with some authority, not just make stuff up or, go to ChatGPT and look like a fool. Go in there, answer questions, connect them to people in the industry that you've seen that have answers to their questions. You start to become known as someone and people start to notice you. They're going to go to your profile. So you need to make sure your profile is optimized with what you do, where you do it, I post, just about once a day. Um, and so people can see what I'm doing. They can see a little bit about me and all of that good stuff when they come over. But just by being that person in there that's active and people get to know, it's a big deal. And then keying off of that is my podcast. So I actually started a podcast in 2020 after reading The Go Giver, and I called it the Blue Crocus Experience because I was going to be Joe Rogan someday, right? And I basically used it to say who wants to come on my show. I'm looking to have people in XYZ niche come on and chat. And I'd get people to come on, and the stats worked out to be about 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 people became clients that came on the show.
Yeah.
And then I would live stream these into the group, and we get interaction on there. People would see me, they'd start to get that facial and name recognition, and it just grew from there.
Yeah. And I would say as a podcast too, you get to be known as like a hub of successful information. Like you can interview people, say in your case in the trades, but like, if I was doing this for attorneys, I could interview some of the attorneys who are having success. Now people associate me with some of the top people, which by the way, just so you guys know, as part of our community, is part of the reason like Lewis and I have people on like Bob Burke. You see Bob Burke, you see Lewis together. You go, those guys most must be cool because they're together. I know I've heard of Bob, I've heard of his book, therefore Lewis must be cool. And you get all this kind of credibility by association. Yeah. So I kind of have a philosophy on that because I know you do a lot of content as well from your profile as well. I see a lot of it is I'm a big believer in that ideas are free and you can give as much valuable ideas and help in the form of ideas as you want, because ultimately people will come to your help for the implementation of those ideas. And so I see this a lot, especially where people are like super afraid that somebody's going to steal their idea and their super secret ad technique and run with it. But in reality, most times, especially with those of you guys who deal with local businesses that, like you said, we're like internet gods where, I could give them the perfect winning Facebook ad, for example, and they would still need my help to go set up a Facebook ad because they don't know how to do it. Right. It's like, it's technically overwhelming. Same way that, like, by the way, when shit breaks around the house, like these are internet hands, not working hands. The only thing I know how to do is go on WhatsApp, text the contractor and say, can you come fix this? I have money for you if you can. So I wonder if you could share just your thoughts on that, on just like, you just give the best possible stuff without holding back. Because I see this a lot where people are afraid if they give people their advice and their help and their stuff that they won't hire you. And as you know, in practice, it's really the opposite.
Yeah. I will come back to that in a second, but before I forget about the Bob Burg effect and what you were saying about podcasts, we're kind of glossing over podcasts, or some people might not really take it seriously, but it's really effective. I know you created a ton of amazing connections through your show here. I've done the same. We happen to both have had Bob on, but not only is it cool for people to associate us with Bob, but I wouldn't have been able to chat with Bob if it wasn't for the show.
Yeah.
Like it's a way that I've been able to get through to decision makers that I would not have been able to talk to on a sales call if that was my goal. Or just like, hey, can I pick your brain, or can we chit chat, on Zoom for half an hour? That's not going to happen. But if it's a podcast thing, then boom, you now have those connections. To your point about implementation, the info is free, the implementation is.
Can I actually cut you off and just tell a story of what you just said, and then we'll go to the implementation thing? But I remember one of my first moves when I was in the legal space. So like, I remember when I started, I literally didn't know a single attorney. I didn't have a friend who went to law school. I'd never hired one. And I remember going to LinkedIn and changing my profile to say attorney marketing expert. I almost laughed writing it because I knew I was such an imposter saying it. And one of my first moves is I Googled like, who are the top lawyers in the world? And I remember the number one personal injury lawyer is a guy named John Morgan, and their law firm is called Morgan & Morgan. And I remember I called up the front desk and I said, in essence, like, yeah, hey, I love what Morgan is doing, especially with advertising and growth. Like, you guys are off the charts. I would love to interview John for like 15 minutes and just share a little bit about his insights of, how he thinks about marketing, advertising, growing a law firm, if he'd be open to it. Excuse me. Let me just grab a drink. And I remember the lady said, hold on a second. And part of you thinks on the inside that they're gonna be like, arrest this man for even asking. Like, how dare he try and get the great John Morgan when he's nobody? Or they're gonna come back and they're asking how many followers, how big is your show? And you're gonna go, how many shows do you have? And the answer was 0 to all of those things. And instead, what they said is July 17th at 2 p.m. or August 2nd at 4 p.m. Like, which one of those works better for you? And I got rescheduled a few times, but we eventually interviewed John Morgan, and I found like, when I could go do a legal speech, for example, like if I said, hey, these are the three best ways to grow a law firm, nobody really cared what I thought. But if I said, hey, I just had a conversation with John Morgan of Morgan and Morgan that does $500 million a year. They're the biggest personal injury law firm on earth. They outspend everybody and they have like, 87 locations or whatever and a staff of like, 10,000 or whatever. And and this is what John and I agreed are the three best ways to grow a law firm. Like suddenly ears perk up, and I'm literally saying the exact same information that follows it. Anyways, let's talk implementation. I just want to share that because a lot of times people think I'm not ready. People will reject me. They need all this, info about it. And then the cool thing is one podcast, person often connects you to someone else. So like it goes on forever.
Yeah, and the
To
other
your
cool thing
point,
is,
John Morgan would have never taken my phone call if I said
yeah,
anything other than I want to interview you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're going to learn stuff along the way. I bet you learned something from him in your chat, right?
Of course. I mean, it's hard not to. You talk to the top guy on the planet.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Now we're finally circling back to info versus implementation. So people can find just about all the info out there anyway. The fact that it's coming from you actually elevates your brand. I have found this anyway. It elevates your brand if you can be the one that delivers it. So I have done this where clients or prospects have been on the phone. They're asking me how to do something, and I'll take info that's out there that I can find or that I've used, but I'll take someone's wording, put it in my own words, and send them over a document on, hey, this is how you can, add your domain to let me access it, or this is how you can, set up your Google business profile. So now I'm the person giving the info. The info's out there. Most likely they can get the info that you have about how to run ads or how to do SEO from somewhere if they look hard enough and long enough. But if you can provide that value for them, now you're the benefactor. You're this benevolent internet god is the term we're using for this show today. That's giving them that information. And then when they need to come to you, maybe they might try it, and some of them might get it, and some of them might not need you. But those people I find tend to become one of our best referral partners. The people that have never used us tend to tag us quite often in the group because they have gotten value at some point or another from what we've sent
Yeah.
over. So it's like it's still paying off one way or another.
And that's something, by the way, that I feel like a lot of people in our space are handicapped by because that's something that can only come from repetition over time, meaning you like literally show up. I have a lot of people in a lot of forums that either ask me, what's the winning ad that's going to make all the money, or what's the winning outreach message, or what's the winning offer I'm going to say. And they don't think of this as a multi-touch thing that in essence, what you're calling a brand, but I would call like, you're just building up authority through repetition. When people see you answer the same kind of question 20, 30, 40, 50 times, suddenly like that person must know something about that topic because they seem to perpetually, you start getting tagged, you start getting shared by people you don't even know. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of your process for coming up with what to post about, what to talk about, because I think a lot of people are either scared to do that. I'll tell you, I know there's the internal stuff for a lot of you guys. My hair looks stupid today, my voice sounds stupid. There's also the who am I? Why I don't have anything valuable to say, like imposter side of things. And then there's just the creative blocks of like, what do I even talk about? And I notice your shit is like you're one of the most consistent people I see post like day after day. You're constantly talking about SEO and contractors. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what kind of stuff resonates with your audience and also like kind of a little bit about your process because I think everybody runs into those creative blocks at some point. And obviously, you figured out your own sort of personal system for overcoming it.
Yeah, so imperfect action beats perfect inaction all day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to have a team that can like do pretty graphics for me now sometimes. But before I just, did the ugliest looking thing in Canva and posted it. Or I just posted text. But when it comes to coming up with content, if you're hanging out in the groups where these people are, or you're talking to enough people on the phone, there's going to be consistent questions that start coming up that you're going to be providing an answer for. So I take that as an opportunity to create an asset. So like people were losing reviews like a year and a half ago. I did a blog post and then I kept seeing this come up in groups and stuff and shared that blog post. Like, hey, here's a blog post that I wrote. Run through it. It's got the whole process. Then they get the reviews back and they'd be like, absolutely thrilled. And then I started being tagged when people saw this in other groups, or they'd send the blog post directly to them. We did this with junk removal owners. I did a cold email that I had used when we started our junk removal company, and I just packaged it up in a little PDF. And I said, this is exactly what I did. This is how I scraped them. And then I did a call to action at the end. Hey, reach out if you need a list for $50 and I'll scrape it for you. I just used D7 Lead Finder, scraped a list in their area. And I sent out like 2,000 people, sorry, 1,000 people downloaded that from groups. I would post it every time I saw people saying, how can I get more jobs or how can I connect with realtors or whatever. So tons of people downloaded it. And then out of that, like 150 people reached out asking me to scrape a list. And I just had an automation to send it over to my team. They'd scrape the list. D7 Lead Finder cost me $10 a month. And then we'd shoot it over. And then I taught them how to use Never Bounce and stuff. Super simple stuff. But that became, some of the things that hit. There's lots of other things I shared that didn't hit. But if you're creating enough assets off of the stuff that people are asking about,
Yeah.
and you're saving yourself time because you can just like pull up the blog post or the PDF or the Google Doc. And two, you then, have a valuable thing that you can share and people start to know you as that person.
Yeah. Amen to that. I've found that when people typically struggle with the creative process, they're making it about the wrong person, which is you and your product and your service and yourself. When you make it about, hey, what are the questions people are asking? What are the things I keep getting asked about? What are the objections I keep hearing in the marketplace? What are other people trying to do? Like you said, they're not all going to catch, but guaranteed at least one or two of them will if you consistently just create resources around the stuff that you see come up again and again and again. Like, for example, I never woke up one day and said I would be the Loom guy. I just I feel like being like, our process, by the way, is video throughout. It's client updates are done through video. Our hiring is done by video. Nobody really asked me, like, how do you guys hire straight through video? Nobody's really ever asked me that. And yeah, whenever I mention we close our sales by video, people go back to that. So I've created many resources and tools and step-by-step guides to do that. And I've become known as that person. But that didn't come from like me, like just waking up one day going, I just want to talk about this to talk about that. That came from people asked me consistently over time. And what you'll find is, even if they're not asking you, to Lewis's point, they're already, your people are self-organized into communities and they're asking each other. And they're asking questions somewhere, someplace. So it's only a question of, are you part of the conversation or not? And when you keep it focused on them, that's the biggest, hack I think there is to it. That like, it ain't about you. If you just post about Lewis every day of the week, nobody, or Blue Crocus, nobody would care. But you're talking about common junk removal problems and things that, trades are trying to do. And how do I scrape leads and to find these people in the area and so forth. And so the things you're answering with your magic internet skills are entirely about them. And if you really understand and internalize that, you'll never run out of shit to talk about because they never run out of questions. And even when you answer the question, they find new ways to ask the same question. Like Ilka, my wife, who sits next to me, sometimes she'll hear me leaving voice notes for people and she goes, I feel like you answer the same questions every day. And I say, yes, I have been for 6 straight years. And I'm going to continue to do that. And like you, a lot of the resources I created were actually for selfish reasons, because I didn't want to keep like just spelling out the same answer over and over. It's just like, just read this post. It'll everything I know about that topic I put into this post. So go back there. But I love that you're starting with value and sort of giving away free information. I think it's actually the simplest and easiest way for people to get started, but it's overlooked because it's not instantaneous. It's not like you answer one question and you become an overnight trillionaire. But I see this all the time with people out there, because I've been doing this like long enough that I have people who come to me and they'll go, hey, that long-term strategy you're talking about that will take 30, 60, 90 days to work, that totally makes sense. I get it. But I just need some fucking cash right now. Like, I'm in scarcity and I need to get a fucking paycheck. And then 2 years will go by and I'll talk to that person again. And I'll go, hey, you should do this long-term 30, 60, 90-day strategy, add value to your people and blah, blah, blah. And they'll go, I just need some fucking cash now. And it's like, if you had just done that 2 years ago, you wouldn't be in this position now. It's because your refusal to just, take some time and contribute to other people is the reason why you're constantly chasing the scarcity. I wonder if you could talk a little bit, just for the last kind of like 2-3 minutes we got here, about how you've managed your operational side, because you're at the level now. You're well past that. This is just Lewis, the one-man company. You got a team, you got people. How do you guys manage the workflow, and how do you stay on top of that with, to me, at least from the outside looking in, it may be different on the inside, but you look like you have a more sanity-based agency than a chaos-based one. I know there's probably still fires to put out and stuff like that. But how do you organize things so that you're able to keep up with the work and do this at scale and keep people happy, when you're beyond just doing this for 3 clients or whatever?
Yeah. Also, just before I answer that, everybody drop in the comments hashtag comedy, because Frankie, I think if this agency thing doesn't work out, you could probably do comedy as a second gig. I think it'd be
Amen to
hilarious.
that.
But yeah, so quite frankly, Chaos is my middle name, and I am not an operations person. So you and I have chatted about this a bit about SOPs and whatnot. So I started in 2019, 2025. It's almost 6 years now of running it, and it feels like we're just getting started. I know we said that off air, but I feel like we're just at the point where things are starting to become less chaotic. I just hired an operations manager in October of last year.
Mhm.
And so she was thrown into the fire, and she's had to kind of parse and pull out everything that like I was like, I'm really good at like apparently fixing a lot of things on the fly. But it doesn't let my team lean into, or it didn't let my team lean into what it was that they needed to be doing and what they needed to be improving and whatnot. And now we're starting to get like pods of our team with leaders. Like they just did like a fun team game thing and posted it in Slack because she was doing like a team building exercise for the SEO team. And I'm like, man, I'm getting FOMO over here. Like I was like, what's going on? This is incredible. So it's like they're building the team within the team. The web team is doing the same thing, and then our ops leader is kind of leading those leaders and trying to train me as well to be more of a leader in the process. But the what I have found, I know you wanted a really nice answer of like, how do you make it look so non-chaotic?
I don't.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the root of it. So I'm just talking. What I have found is often the things that I thought were people problems before are process problems. I'm
Yeah.
looking over the last year and a half, the people that we've had to let go because they just weren't living up to the standard that I had in my mind. And it's because the standard was in my mind and it wasn't readily available for them to see. And they weren't trained on the standard, they weren't trained on the process, and they weren't held accountable. The holding accountable and then like, pushing someone in. For example, there was a guy on our web team who was just putting out really crappy product. Kept coming back, tons of revisions and stuff. And old me would have been like, all right, you're out. Let's find someone else. But the ops manager and the web team leader, they worked with him over a 2 week period. And now he's up to speed now. He's putting out great product. They sat him down and said, hey, this is what's going on. Like this is, we can't keep going like this. We're going to have to find a replacement for you if this keeps going. And then they worked him through and trained him, and we're back to a really really solid team member. So if my lessons in operations could be distilled, that's what I'm learning right now.
Yeah.
Very very much in the process of learning to be a leader that
Yeah.
can lead a team of leaders.
I had the same thing. I concluded a lot of things about people for many years. Oh, they're lazy. They don't have work ethic. They don't understand this. Nobody cares. And I started to realize, like when somebody doesn't make a burger right at McDonald's, they don't go, "Oh, you're an idiot. You can't make burgers. We're gonna have to let you go." They go, "Hey, let me show you the process for searing it properly. You got to wait till the griddle's hot, then put it on." And did you wait till the griddle's hot? No, that's where it's screwing up. Let's from now on make sure the griddle's always hot before you do step one. And then all of a sudden, hey, they make the standardized burger the way you wanted. Holy crap. They weren't incompetent. They were just missing a step in the process. And I found like my batting averages with hiring personally have gone to like 80% when they used to be like 5%. I'd find one diamond in the rough out of 20. Now I hire 10 people, 8 of them work out and are still with us long term. There's one more thing I wanted to say in there, but I guess, oh yeah, one of the things for those of you guys who are going through a similar challenge, I found this one of the most difficult things, um, because as you level up and go through the stages you're at, like almost always, like to get to where you're at, there's a lot of hustle and grind and just making shit happen. And then you become this leader of a team. And for you to actually get stuff done requires using other people. But you've trained yourself for the last like 5 years just to hustle and do stuff. And so your first instinct is always to do it yourself and take
Brutal.
stuff away from your team. And it actually takes a lot of effort to then untrain the very thing that made you successful to that point, because it'll make you unsuccessful going forward. Anyways, since we're coming up on time here, tell folks where they can learn a little bit more about you, follow you, and lean into some of the stuff that you guys are posting and your sort of styles. And I would invite you guys to ask some questions to either of us in the comments, to see how you can apply this to your own kind of area of practice.
For sure. Yeah, I'm an open book. Shoot me a message anytime. Happy to help with what I've learned. I've asked a lot of people and paid a lot of people to try and help me, step outside of what I knew. But yeah, Louis Vandervalk on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Google me. I'm a pretty SEO friendly name. I don't think there's any other Lewis Vanderbox out there, so it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to find me.
All right, you syrup powered junkie. We love you. Thanks for coming on here and doing this.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, if you like this video, you may also like my best-selling book here, Beyond the Agency Box. It is all about scaling a digital marketing agency while eliminating meetings and phone calls. We actually sell our stuff phoneless. We don't have any client meetings, and we also hire our team entirely without meeting phone calls, which allows us to, like actually kind of live a life. I've laid out the entire blueprint in everything you need to know, getting clients, onboarding, setting expectations, scaling, building a team, you name it. It has been a bestseller on Amazon now for over 5 straight years, but now you can get it even cheaper than you can get it on Amazon. So I can't tell you the exact price because it may change when this video is released, but there should be a link to it below, either in the description of the video or as well as a pinned comment. So if you're interested in that, check out that video and you can get a copy for super cheap.